Uh, the new boy is stars Kate Blanchett as a nun who lives in the middle of nowhere in Australia, where with an orphanage with about 10 Aboriginal boys who are all orphans and are living there, and it begins with a young boy elsewhere, quite a way away, being sort of chased down and caught by a sort of police officer, bundled into a sack and sent off to this orphanage. And this was very much part of the Australian government's policy at the time, which was to, I think I say this with caution, they described it, their policy was described, and they say this at the start, as breed out the black.
Ugh.
So they did what they could to separate children from their cultures, reminiscent of what happened in Canada, and this was what was going on in the early 20th century. And the film focuses on the experience of this new boy who doesn't have a name, who is slowly becoming part of the life in this orphanage in the middle of nowhere, where you have there are the two nuns who are there, and a man who helps them, and it's difficult to describe it in some ways, but it just follows this boy who was clearly very closely in touch with who he was, with the natural world around him, and his his involvement with living in this orphanage, and how they look to change him. And it's the Catholic Church, as represented by Kate Blanchett, is broadly speaking used as a synonym for the Australian government,
Mm.
and for this experience of seeing how the child changes, and what the sort of the very lived experience of this boy. And so it's like a microcosm of wider situation. It's
Yeah,
it's a very difficult film to watch.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
It's an odd film. I mean, it
yeah.
was saw that after seeing Drive Away Dolls. So there's quite that two very odd films, and odd in different ways.
Like opposite ends of the spectrum.
Very, very different. It was thought provoking. It's well scripted. It hasn't been that well reviewed, I gather. Um, and it is a funny film to watch. It is odd. The way they do things is odd. The reasons for people's behaviour are both, normal and odd. I mean, and I will just keep saying odd over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
It's very, very difficult
Is,
to.
can I just ask one question, Ollie? Are the nuns nice or not nice?
Yes. So they're
The nuns,
nice.
they're
The
nice because
nuns are nice.
normally in films we'll talk about nuns. Is when you get this, they're normally quite cruel. I think there was, what was
Yeah,
it I
they're
watched on the
sadists,
plane?
aren't
I
they,
think it
normally?
was a Western one where like they've got Native American people that they're trying to, but that's quite brutal. They're quite brutal with them.
Yeah,
In
they're
that
they're
film.
very much they're very kind, and they're very well meaning. And
Oh,
one
good.
of the nuns was Aboriginal herself. Uh,
Okay.
so it's I think one could say that there's some of it, there is cruelty in their kindness, not because they mean things unkindly, but because the nature of what's happening has an intrinsic cruelty to it.
And it just passes them by. They don't realize that it could be cruel.
No,
They think
no,
they think what they're doing is like a Well, essentially, this film, I heard that this film sounds like a thesis that I might have been banging on about for years. I mean, I know, Sean and Sharon, you've heard me banging on about this about this for years. And whenever a film about Australia comes up, and I'm quite happy that films are being made now, where that sort of like Australian films are being made that reckon with Australia's past. Because I remember there was The Nightingale, and The Nightingale,
Yeah,
oh
the
my,
Nightingale. Yeah,
amazing
them
film.
fellas there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
amazing film. But my
amazing film.
God,
Yeah.
my God, essentially, I find it really hard to think about Australia without just,
Mm.
letting out
There
a
was
big,
there
massive,
was
exaggerated
there was
sigh.
another one with Ray Winston. I can't remember what that one was. Um,
Oh,
Ray Winston plays a
yeah, it's
policeman
it's
in it.
it's like an Australian Western, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
it.
It's
The
yeah. He,
Proposition.
the
yeah, it
what?
might be. Yeah, Proposition.
The
Yeah,
Proposition. Yeah, I think that's it.
yeah,
That's it. The
yeah,
Proposition.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it's just that because, as I said, this is like colonialism writ large about taking a local person and doing your very best to
Just to
remove
change him. Mm.
everything that they have, everything that they figured out, everything that they have experienced, and replace it with
Find them.
yours, regardless
Yeah.
of how inappropriate it is for the environment that they're in. And
Yes.
I'm happy this film has been made. I might watch it one of these days, but I mean, even just hearing about it is making me want to cry. So,
Yeah, I will sometime separate to this. I will talk to you about, some of the small spoilery details about how some of it is illustrated, which is very clever.
yeah,
It's
I've heard some sort of magic realism stuff, and there's a
yes,
lot of stuff I've heard about this film that makes me think like this is what I have always thought about coming from someone from a colonized country. This is something that I've always thought as to what we lost, and by we, I don't mean just the people who got colonized. I mean the entire world. What the entire world lost by these people being colonized and being made to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
British. But anyway, how many stars would you give The New Boy?
it's going to be a very high three.
Okay.
It's very good. It is very good, and the reason I'm not doing one of my, going overboard high scores is because it's
Because we teased you about it last week, yeah, man.
yeah. But it's borderline 3-4 really. It's because it is very good and it's very interesting, and I don't want to watch it again.
Yeah, yeah. This seems to be a week for films like that.